Much can be said about the differences between men and women. Biologically, we know that they're not made the same. There's different frame and different structure. Their desires are generally different. What they play with as children is generally different. How they interact with one another is different. And what we see is that while these things are different, it doesn't make one right and the other wrong, or one good and the other bad, but they are, by definition, different. And understanding those differences can keep you out of a lot of trouble. We're here in Ephesians 5 in these midweek devotionals, midweek in the Word, looking at Paul applying grace and unity to that first fundamental building block of all society in the family, specifically here in marriage. We've been unpacking verses 22 through 33 for the last several weeks, and here as we conclude this section, looking at husbands and wives, we want to highlight specifically what he teaches us in verse 33. It says this, hear the word of the Lord, Ephesians 5:33. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. The main point I want you to see here in this brief devotional is God's design and the need for love and respect. You know, it's fascinating when you look at that. You would think it would say love and love, or respect and respect, but it says, husbands, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands. You see, the greatest needs of men and women are not exactly the same. Everyone needs both love and respect, but between men and women, by and large, there's a different priority order. Think about it. When do women generally tear up at the movies? It's at that scene where the hero and the heroine express their love for one another, when finally Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet come together. Why? Because God has wired up women to focus on love and the innate need to be loved. Switch that over to the men. When do men tear up at movies? None of them will actually admit it, but what we see is that men get emotional and tear up at movies at that moment when one of the war buddies decides to sacrifice himself so that all of his fellow soldiers in arms can survive, or when the team finally comes together to pull off the nearly impossible victory in the end. Why? Because men are wired up to focus on honor and respect and have a deep need for that respect. In fact, researchers have studied, and in conflict between husbands and wives, 72% of women said they felt unloved, while 83% of men said they felt disrespected. Women need love more than anything else in a relationship. Having conversations with close friends, talking about the details of life, the things that are on your heart, that's what resonates with women. Men need respect more than anything else in a relationship. A man coming up to you, addressing you as men, and how proud he is of you, and the deep respect he has for your strength and courage is what motivates men to charge into battle. This demonstrates, again, God's wonderful design. How He has created male and female as we are. He has made us to have these needs, and He teaches us from 2,000 years ago that these are the needs we need to seek to meet in each other. We need to realize and embrace that this distinction in how we relate and communicate to one another is important, and it will save a great deal of strife. In your marriage, you need to realize innately that your spouse's needs are not the same as your own. So part of fulfilling your vows in marriage is meeting the needs of your spouse. This also extends to how we relate to our children, but more on that in the coming weeks as we talk about how we speak to children. Guys deeply desire to be respected, and ladies earnestly need to be loved. There's a pastor who's done a great deal of work on this. He even put out a study entitled Love and Respect. His name is Emerson Eggerichs, and he talks about the crazy cycles of love and respect. What you see is that the husband responds without love, and the wife responds without respect, and when he responds without love, then she responds without respect, and it just continues going on and amplifies over and over. Take, for instance, the example, the wife fixes his his favorite meal, but he gets home 45 minutes late from work and doesn't call, so dinner is cold. She says when he walks in the door, "You're never home on time. You never call. You're so uncaring. If you loved me, you would call." Echoing through it all is, "I need to be loved. I need to be loved." He hears in this, "You don't respect me. You don't respect the work that I do." So he walks off, puts on his jogging gear, and goes out of the house for an hour on a long run, responding without love because he doesn't feel respected. Many couples live in this explosive cycle day after day, either both spouses or one or the other responding without love and respect, and the cycle keeps on spinning, creating turmoil in the home. Emerson writes this example. Feeling overweight after the holidays, Michelle complains to Adam, her husband. He listens quietly. The next day at the bookstore, Adam sees front and center the book, Dieting for the Christian Woman, post-holiday menus. He purchases it. When he brings it to Michelle, she goes ballistic. "I can't believe you. This is unreal. You don't love me for who I am, but only love me if I look nice. You're despicable." You flip it around the other way. Browsing the titles in the marriage section of the bookstore, Kelly is drawn to the book, Talking, The Key to Marital Bliss. She buys it. This is the third marriage book she has bought this year. She intends for Jason, her husband, to read it with her. Bringing it home, she sets it by Jason's lounge chair for him to devour. She's underlined in yellow key sections for him to read. Instead, the book collects dust. Irked, Kelly asks, "Why aren't you reading this book about marital bliss?" Jason replies, "We'll just get in a fight. Frankly, I am tired of never being good enough. Our marriage gives me blisters, not bliss." What's happening in each scenario? Each is crying out for their deepest need, love or respect, but the other can't recognize the cry because all they see is an attack on their own deepest need for love or respect. Contrary to this is what Emerson entitles an energizing cycle. He says it doesn't have to be crazy. His love motivates her respect, and her respect motivates his love. When he comes home on time with a dozen roses and says, "I picked these up for the most beautiful woman on the planet," and then hands them to her, she in turn works with delight to put dinner on the table and thanks him for working hard. Knowing your spouse's need unlocks your ability to understand and bless him or her. Wives, look for ways and opportunities to display and communicate respect to your husband. Husbands, you must study your wife and seek to show and communicate love and compassion to her. You see, obedience to Christ is the most rewarding plan. Some cynical people may hear this and say, "Well, this seems like an awfully self-serving motivation. You give them what they need so you can get what you want." It's like going to get something at the store. If you pay the right price, you can get the product. But our motivation is not so self-centered. Our motivation needs to be obedience to Christ and God's command and the goal of blessing our spouse. The relationship and covenant of marriage is all about what you're going to give. In that covenant of marriage, when you stood before the pastor and before God and before those witnesses on that day, those vows you took were nothing about what you demanded. It was all about what you were giving. You will never love or respect rightly if it is purely motivated by wanting to get something out of the other. You see, the beauty of marriage is seen as both husband and wife joyfully give for the sake of the other's happiness and well-being. And living according to God's good design is what makes for happiness and flourishing, beginning in the home. Marriage is designed by God to be full of joy and blessing. But unless we seek to follow God's good plan and intention in our marriage, it will be anything but joyful and blessed. The two simple keys to marriage are love and respect. Here again Ephesians 5:33. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Herein lies God's design and intention for joy and blessing in your marriage.